Right, thank you very much everyone for coming here today. As you can see from the title, we're going to be really talking about the CEFR, and I'll talk for about 45 minutes and I'll have a 5-minute Q&A, but obviously afterwards I'm very happy to take questions as well. Okay, as you can see, my name's Vicky Clark and I'm from the British Council, the Global Assessments team, and our job and our role in British Council is, first of all, we design, develop, support APTIS. Hopefully some of you know that test. And we also work with ministries around the world advising on assessment policy and how it's aligned with their language education policies. So that's predominantly my role. I'm going to try to explain the difference between, why we've shifted from the 4 skills to the 4 modes of communication. Okay, you're all thinking, well, how are they not still relevant? They're still important, but let's see how. Okay, so let me show you reception. We know receptive skills are listening and reading, right? Okay, it's clear. We know productive skills are speaking and writing. Listening and reading, speaking and writing. Okay, so there's your 4 skills, ladies and gentlemen. But we've got 2 more modes of communication. What we're saying in the CEFR is that these skills do not capture the true element of communication in everyday language. They are an important part, but they're not all of it. So we need interaction and mediation. Now, if you see interaction, can you see it's the sum of these 2? So I'm going to have a conversation with myself. Okay, now married ladies, you know you do this every night at home, so this is not unusual. All right, so let's start my conversation with myself. Morning, Vicky. Good morning. How are you? I'm fine. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to the cinema. Really, the cinema? I saw Batman last week. Oh, Batman, my son loves Batman. Okay, conversation with myself. How interesting. What I'm trying to show is obviously there was listening and there was speaking. Okay, so the reception and production were there, but there's one added element. When one of the persons said, I'm going to the cinema, the other person didn't reply, the CEFR has 4 modes of communication. The other person replied, oh, I saw Batman. Then when that person heard, the other person heard Batman, they then replied, oh, my son loves Batman. What's happening is it's not just about producing and receiving, okay? It's a joint construction of meaning. And that's the most important part. We co-construct meaning when we interact. Okay, we don't just, well, sometimes we push our agenda, but theoretically, the idea is you co-construct meaning. And that's why production and reception don't capture that. Okay, so that's why there's interaction, because of the or the joint construction of meaning. All right, that's clear. We know interaction. So what's this problem? Okay, now mediation, as you can see, is, well, first of all, it combines either 2 or 3 of these, mediation. But what is it? Very simply, mediation is about facilitation of communication. Okay? What does that mean? Well, first of all, in mediation, I am not concerned about my message. I am concerned in the sense I am an intermediary. I'm a bridge between 2 people or a source, 2 sources who cannot achieve the communication successfully on their own. Example, this lady, do you speak French?
No.
No, good. Well, not good, you should be learning French. It doesn't matter. But I have a French menu, we're in a French restaurant, okay? Now, I know this lady and I know she's a very fussy eater and I know she doesn't like red meat, okay? And I also know that she doesn't like food to be fussed around with, a very plain eater, okay? So now I've got the menu, I'm not translating the menu. Why would I translate the steak? She doesn't eat red meat. So what I do is I choose. I decide on what information to give her from that source. And in addition, I might put some background information as well. Oh, there's a nice fish dish and it's got a sauce, Hollandaise sauce. Oh, I think that's with, I think it's egg yolk and but it's quite plain, it's okay. You'll quite like it, I think. Yes, and I know that the fish is sourced responsibly because I read that in the newspaper. I'm not translating the menu, I'm intermediary, giving her the information she needs. Okay, but it doesn't have to be between two languages, everyone. If your mother comes out of the doctor and she had a lot to process and she says to you, what did she say or what did he say? Then you yourself, in the same language, may simplify for her, and as we all know with older parents, leave quite a bit out. Yeah? Okay? Because we know, and we're trying to facilitate that. Okay? So as teachers, we do many things. We facilitate language, and we also mediate concepts as well. You've got a textbook, say history or chemistry in EMI. You've got to explain to your students that idea that you're trying to learn, they're trying to learn. So that might mean reading from the textbook or whatever, but it also means giving examples, adding information, changing the source. You could read it and then perhaps you might want to talk about it. The idea is from one source to another. Perhaps a telephone call. I don't speak Spanish, my colleague does. If there's a telephone call in Spanish, then she'll tell me what I need to know from that telephone call. She's not going to give it back verbatim, okay, in English. So mediation is around facilitation of communication. It's around what we do as teachers, what we do in the real world when we're interacting in a plural linguistic society, okay? And as I said, there's a lot more to do with mediation, but we won't have time to do it, unfortunately. We're talking about a lot at conferences recently. But basically, as you can see, the 4 skills are not sufficient to explain how we communicate in today's world. Okay, so I think, very, very quickly, 1 minute, these are some of the descriptors here for, you can see overall listening, and all of these descriptors have A1 to C2, some stop at C1 because there's no C2 difference, okay, and then the same for production, they're all in the CEFR document, this is the 2018 document, okay, a new one is, that's quite nice, there's a couple of about speaking and about writing. This is the interaction. And finally, the 19 I talked about with mediation, mediating text, concepts and communication. I advise you to go to the 2018 document. Go to the 2001 document as well, because it explains all these competencies I talked about in much more detail. And then have a look for yourself around the illustrative descriptors. So thank you very much for listening. I think we've got 1 or 2 minutes for questions, if there are any. Yes?
Certainly in Spain, mediation is now becoming a part of exams.
Absolutely.
Is that something, as far as you know, that Cambridge are interested in or looking at?
I don't know about Cambridge per se, in the sense there are partners, but I'm not quite sure. But like the British Council, our tests do actually include some areas of mediation. If you go back to mediation of text, if you look at the IELTS test, obviously that Cambridge and we both co-own, we have note-taking in the Cambridge test, and there is processing text as well, where you see something written like a chart, and then you explain it in writing. So they're explaining data. So in our test, we already have some aspects of mediation. The problem around assessing mediation is a big one for us in the testing community, because mediation, as we talked about, includes not just language, it includes your background knowledge, choice, because you choose. So it's going to cause us a bit of an issue in terms of how we assess. Now, my personal view, and the view of many of my colleagues in the Council's testing department, is just because something is important, mediation is important to teach, doesn't mean you have to test it. Teaching a 5-year-old good social skills is important. Teaching a husband good social skills, ladies, is important. But we don't offer them a test. So what is important doesn't have to be tested. It can be assessed in the classroom. You know, they can read the text in German, or Spanish rather, in Spain, and then they can present to the class who have been given perhaps different, they know what the class likes about that in their own way. It doesn't have to be tested. So yes, so it is a problem for us, but I don't believe it should be tested. That doesn't mean we're not investigating and looking into how it will be tested.
And the escuela has included mediation.
That's right. That's right. But it's important. We don't disagree with that. It's important. That's what we do in modern communication now in a plural linguistic society. But again, we repeat, just because something is important, it doesn't mean it has to be tested. But in schools, if it's not tested, will it be focused? Right. That's we've got that problem now, that vicious circle. So how we go around there. Professor Barry O'Sullivan, who's our head of our testing department in the British Council, assessment expert, his view is that parts of it some parts of mediation, especially mediating the text, we do and could further test, but areas such as mediating concepts, where you facilitate all the groundwork to get people to talk and understand, and mediating communication, where you're like a peacekeeper, trying to help people with different viewpoints who are angry, trying to calm them down, that's going to be far more difficult to assess. But certainly there are some areas of mediating a text where we can work at looking at tests if that is something that we need to do in the future. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. And if anyone's interested in APTIS and the CEFR, in my next session, I'll be talking about how each task in APTIS relates to the CEFR. Okay, so in other words, task number 1 in reading, task number 2 in reading, what skills and competencies are we actually targeting to help you prepare for your students, not just for the test, but to help them improve from A1 to A2, etc. So that will be my next talk. But thank you very much.